What's going on, people? It is Sunday. I'm just gonna assume y'all get access to Blackboard tomorrow, which means I get to start learning who you are and you get to start watching these videos. Two more left. I'm kind of going in reverse order. I wanted to prep all the labs earlier in the summer, and now I'm doing all the kind of administrative stuff. One thing that we're going to be doing in this class is writing up our lab reports in a software called LaTeX. You may have heard of it before. This particular environment that we're using is called Share Overleaf. It's incredible. It's been around forever. It used to be called Share LaTeX, I think. Now it's called Overleaf. Looks like this at the start. Let me just kind of go back to the home screen for you, like this. And you can see I've kind of made documents for all of you. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. This one is the main one though. So this document is the one that's going to be linked in the intro to Overleaf. That is this document. I've been editing this document for whenever I wrote that, 5+ years ago. So it just has, it obviously this document is not this. It's like a bunch of things that might be helpful for all this. Why? Why are we doing this? Why can't you just write things in Word? One, if you're typing equations like that, I've seen some students have done it in Word. Seems awful to me, especially once the syntax of how to write things like that. Equal signs with little and symbols around it means it's centered. All of these, anything that has two little and symbols around it is now going to be in alignment. Um, what else? Like, making the parentheses bigger. We'll go, equation by equation. So that's one reason. We're writing a ton of equations. Um, let's see, what other reasons are there? It is incredibly shareable. So that we'll talk about in a little bit, that this is something that all of you can just share with each other. I have access to it. It's kind of like a Google Drive for science. And speaking of science, it's where all scientific papers are written. Every journal that you would submit a paper to has a LaTeX template that you can download. Like if you were to do this and say, download a source, and you can just download what that journal says they want the formatting to be. Because at the top of this document, you'll see there's some craziness going on. All of this stuff, Overleaf has an absolutely wonderful, much like Python, but Overleaf formatting. I'm sure yeah. Their Learn website is just incredible. All sorts of things here. What I'm going to do is teach you how to use LaTeX, how I learned to use LaTeX. At various points, when I was actually writing this thesis, I probably knew what all this meant. But most of it, is not particularly necessary. The way that I learned LaTeX was someone did what I'm going to do for you and just gave me a blank document that has what I'll call the preamble. Basically everything before begin document. So all of this you definitely don't need. That was from my collaborators. That was, if they text the word, or, if they do this CS, then whatever they write will come up in red. So that's like a way to comment. We didn't have premium access, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Yeah, all of these things not particularly necessary for any of, unless you really want to, get into the weeds of this. Um, yeah, speaking of thesis, until you write your own thesis. And I know, a lot of you may be writing a senior thesis, so you may be needing to use something like this quite soon. Or, if you go to grad school, you'll definitely need to be using this. Or even in the industry, I'm sure there's great use of this in industry. But effectively, this is really just something that helps organize scientific writing, like making tables of contents easier. Let me just give you because this is just I think it's a 10-page document that I just kind of crammed full of every type of thing that I've ever done in LaTeX. But let me show you like what a final product could look like. Because when you're writing, a thesis or something that is hundreds of pages, it's quite useful to have a table of contents where, people can click on it. You can actually click on these things. And so on and so forth. Is there anything else I need to show you in here? Um, nah. So also, it does actually have the ability to make PowerPoints. Um, it's a little bit arduous, but especially if you're doing things like, let's get some equations in here. Stuff like this, I would rather do this, where if I click on this, and you'll notice when I'm doing this, this over here is what your PDF will look like. Every time you click recompile, I'm not going to do it on this document because this is a Beamer document. That's the type of environment that they use for a PowerPoint-like thing. But to me, it's far superior to PowerPoint for a lot of reasons. The math, typing that out, is way easier to me. Trust me, the learning curve for LaTeX personally is way, way lower than even like the Python stuff that we'll be doing. Even though I kind of, showed you how to do most of the Python stuff that we're going to be doing. I think it's easier. The commands aren't too crazy. Little thing before, you start doing your Greek letter, as soon as you type that, it'll start to suggest things for you. So you're like, let's say I want to make another right arrow. As soon as I start typing right, it'll give me some extra stuff. And since it's been it's been a minute here, I believe this is what this is. Yeah, there's some AI stuff here. So what it does, um, I haven't seen it in action yet. It looks like it's not compiling very well. Maybe it's because it's this Beamer document. I've seen like little previews of see like this little. It's telling me what it's gonna look like even before I click the compile button. Um, This one's just particularly nice. Like if someone, especially if you're defending a thesis and someone says, "Can you go back to this slide?" It's kind of cool to just like click and they're like, "Oh, that was quick. Cool." Or down here. I mean, these are all things you could do in PowerPoint. It's just it's a lot easier to do a lot of these things in Overleaf or LaTeX, I guess is the go-to way to say it. So let's get out of that. We don't, you guys, well, I mean, you will be doing some slide presentations. You can use Beamer if you want. I personally would not recommend it. The learning curve for Beamer is way higher. Um, and PowerPoint does almost everything you would ever need. If you want to type an equation, type it in this document, take a screenshot of it, and then put it in your PowerPoint. I've lost countless hours trying to make something look really nice in Beamer and then just be upset by how long it took. All right, so let's go line by line here. Again, just kind of skipping this whole preamble. That's how I was taught LaTeX. Eventually, you'll need to import a package to do something that you want to do. Like for instance, this table down here, right here, would not have been possible if I didn't have, um, where is it? Oh, I forget which one it is. It's been so long. Weirdly, this one has something to do with it. Bracket definitely does, but that's kind of more generic. Um, Graphics is definitely related to tables. Anywho, you can see some of them are kind of this is what's called commenting out. So commenting out things means now the computer is using it, right? So now this is highlighted, and if I press compile, the computer will use this package. But I don't want to do that because this one in particular is talking something about the table of contents, and table of contents are kind of nice. I think it's a nice touch anyway. Um, okay, so title page. Not, super necessary. I'm just keeping this in there because it more more reminiscent of a thesis, which I think you guys will be writing before you would write a journal article type thing. So the kind of template I'm using for this is more of a thesis, not necessarily a scientific journal article. So what I'm doing here, empty just means that it's not going to start numbering my pages until I end that. Let's see here. Begin centering means everything that I'm going to start doing here is going to be centered on the page. This is just basically like a blank line, really. And usually you don't have to do that, but when you're doing like special environments like title pages, you usually need to use this little V space. And I kind of forget what the asterisk does. That may actually be nice to know. I think it's like a force. It like forces the thing to do it specifically. Um, Here it is. Blah, 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 blah. No, that's not what I want. That would mean like if you were to type that in, your section called introduction, like that, it wouldn't have a number on it. Not a huge use of that because then it doesn't show up in your table of contents. Um, I could have sworn it was something like force this to happen now. Um, let's do VSpace because that's the main way that I'm seeing it used so far. I can't quite remember what it does. Here we go. Yeah, so honestly, I've never used VSpace without a star on it, uh, because it just seems like yeah, it's always disregarded at the start of the page. Um, Not really sure what all that's about. So just yeah, if you ever want to make a little space, V space, vertical space, H space would be space like that way. And these are all just some fancy fonts that I found that kind of differentiated some things. I'm going to put the title here. And speaking of, what this will look like, I took the liberty of creating a ton of Overleaf documents because we don't have enough Overleaf license for everyone. So that means not everyone can use the premium features. Um, for most, Overleaf is completely sufficient. Like I've done everything with a non-premium license, but a premium license allows you to add more collaborators, which we'll need. We have, groups of up to four for this class, and it also allows you to see the history of the document. So, like, if someone changes something and everyone disagrees with it, you can just also just comment it out. And you can do. There's another way to do this. Um, Instead of like this happens to be one line, but what if you wanted to comment out this, like all of that? How do I get rid of that? It looks like it's one, two, three. I don't want to type that many little percent symbols. So what I can do, let's go to where this is in the document so you can see it in action. What is this? This is free. There we go. Something like this. So if I want that to disappear, I would type something along these lines. If false, and then a weird one at the end, if backwards, F high. And then I compile that, and now this will not be there. Disappeared. Bring it back, and there it is. Only downside to that is that it's a little bit hard to see. Like if you're just scrolling through this, it's easy to lose things. Like I've definitely forgot to put a question on an exam because it was commented out, and I didn't realize that. So be careful with that. It's a lot easier if you just do, you can tell that's not there, right? Um, and those little symbols that show up will say there's some kind of error happening. So the error here is that all of these commands in here, specifically these ones, were these ones, um, that would be fine outside of something. That one, these are all math commands. So unless I'm in a math environment like equation array, none of those are going to work. So I have to be inside an environment that accepts that. Let's just keep going up and down. Oh yes, I forgot to explain why we're what the sharing was all about. Yes, so you can go back to previous versions, and I can also, because you guys are going to be working as a group, you're just going to be submitting one lab report per group. So that's going to hopefully cut down on y'all's work a lot. I mean, this is a one credit course. I don't think everyone should have to be writing a lab report every single week. So because there is kind of one due every single week, not, if you think about the what this looks like, we've got and if you check out the syllabus, I'll have that video in a second. But checking out the syllabus, one lab report, two lab reports. You pick which one you want for that one. and then you do it, again later. We'll get to that. One lab report, one lab report, one lab report. So there's not that many lab reports, so it's kind of you're not really doing one every single week because you get to choose which of the 2 weeks you want to do. But again, I think it's a little bit much for a one credit course. So we're doing things as a group, but I need to make sure everyone's actually contributing. So this like premium feature will be great because then I can actually like see who did what. And so all these links are basically so that I'm the owner of the document. I made them. If you look at my LaTeX, it looks pretty crowded now. So I own all these documents and I've done this. Click in here and then I click share and I turned on link sharing and then I copied this link over to each of these respectively. So there's one in diffraction grading, there's one in speed of light, and there's one in interferometry, our first few weeks of lab. So these will all look, these are incredibly blank. There's like nothing in these. So, what we were just looking at, this LaTeX learning document, is basically this one. What I've done is I click share and I did read. So that's what this link will be. Just so that, everyone isn't editing my document. You can just make your own copy of that. Like if I were to do the open in a private window, I don't know if I need to make no, I don't even need to make an account for this to work. So then I would go back here. Oh, well, then I would have to log in. Even without logging in, I can Command A and just highlight all of this and copy and paste it over to my own document. So that's quite nice. Let me just make sure that actually works. Let's just copy all this, put it in some random note or something. Copy. Okay, it works. Cool. So yes, you can totally just put your own make your own document based on this document so that you can always be referencing because these like lab documents, I've taken everything out. So there is no the title page looks all wonky. It's just title, authors. What is that? Oh, that was because I was actually writing a thesis. You don't need a supervisor. Abstract, the institution looks kind of crammed up there because it's down here. I'm sure that looks a little weird in the coding. Actually, it doesn't. It's just because there's nothing in that paragraph right there. That's why it looks like that. Date, and then yeah, there's nothing in here. I kept the table of contents for you. But yeah, there's basically nothing. I kept the picture in there just because I think learning that is probably the hardest, like getting the figures in there. But everything that is in this document will just copy and paste it and put it over here as you're creating your documents. And I left some random sections and subsections and stuff for you. Okay, let's get beyond this title page. Page break. That means I am at the end of this title page. I'm starting a new page, even though there's not much space in there. Table of contents, I don't have to do anything for. Again, this is another, I'm doing the title page just because I don't want any numbers on the table of contents. I want my table of contents to actually start at 1. It's just my personal preference. So as soon as I type the table of contents section, every section, and you'll see it down here, these sections and the subsections will just propagate into that table of contents. So you don't have to do anything to make this, which is quite nice. Okay. Subsections into the sections, I mean, technically I'm thinking, what could y'all use subsections for? I guess if you wanted to do like an intro, you could split it up into like historical background, the math behind the phenomena we're doing, why this is important. You don't need to break that one up, but maybe like the data analysis section, like, okay, here's our data. Next section, here's what it means. Next section, like, how could we improve on our data? Something like that. Some English words. Let's just go slowly through this. Okay, right. So this is called an inline equation. So the way that you do that is just one cache symbol. If you wanted to put the equation on its own, you would do 2 cache symbols. And the best way to do it is make it its own equation. So the reason this is the best way to do it is because let's say I closed the thesis, but let's say you're on page 200 of your thesis and you want to refer to an equation that was 100 pages ago. Instead of retyping that same equation, you just say, you know, later on, I'll say, I want to reference this equation. And what I'm typing is this. I'm saying refer to that label. And that's the label that I put on the equation. So when you go to this in the document, it says 1.1. And sure enough, if you were on page 200, not page one, and you clicked on it on page 200, it would snap you right to that part in the PDF. So you can kind of go back and forth. That's the hyperlink aspect of things that's quite nice. So that's the normal way to do an equation so that you can actually number it. And it's only numbering it like, two numbers like that because we're in this kind of weird section here. Let's see. Here's where this one's going to be, a big one. So this is whenever you have to like kind of derive something for the reader, right? You don't want to just like maybe you want to tell them where E equals mc squared comes from, and you're starting from something like conservation of energy, something like that. And this one, it looks like we're doing conservation of energy. So how does the energy change? Well, if I take the derivative of all these things, it ends up being zero. So because this is all the one result that I want from this whole thing is just that the time derivative of energy is equal to zero. So what I do is I only number the last line. And that's just common practice in most science things. So what I do here, here's my first equation. And remember the little thing we were mentioning earlier? If I put a and symbol on each side of the equality, it doesn't have to be an equality. It could be, how about a question mark? It will line up anything that is between the two and symbols. So it doesn't, it could be anything. What else here? And then the next thing is where I'm going to include this command in literally every single line because I don't want that to have an equation number. One thing that you could do if you were doing something that you're not going to refer to again, you can use, and this is the star symbol that I actually do remember what it's for. If I were to say begin equation array, it's probably here somewhere, like this. This equation array has a little star symbol, and there are no numbers. And this one, I don't have to do the like no number each time. I was just trying to, introduce the correct way to do things the first time. And so on the very last one, and these two dashes, that's new line. So new line of my equation. So new line, and then this one, I don't have the no number command. So this one will actually be numbered. And then I'm done with my math writing. So I'm going to say end equation array, equin array. That's my environment that I'm using for this. Okay, what next? Just more equations. I don't think there's anything special to use there. I mean, we can cover some of these little commands. Here, I'm doing let's find this one. So normal parenthesis here. So just type a regular parenthesis. The reason that I'm using this big command, and they get bigger, this is a fun one. I actually kind of want to show you the font size. The commands for it are kind of funny. Um, Oh, that's a math command. So big, yeah. But like, you can kind of see how they do it. It's like no capital large, all caps large. It's just kind of weird. And they do a similar thing with big with one G, big with two G's. So big with two G's is what I found to work well for fractions. If I want to put a parenthesis outside of a fraction, I'm going to type big with two G's before I put my parenthesis. And fractions, that's this command here. You do frac, and then whoop. No comment, please. Get out of there. In my first curly brackets is my numerator. In my lower curly brackets, my denominator. And also, like as soon as you start, like for instance, if I wanted to type an equation with a fraction in it, as soon as you start typing it, it's going to come up. So like a lot of this stuff is like if you just remember frac, and if I started typing big, 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 big. um, Anyway, okay. Page break. So I'm starting a new page over here. Is that a picture? It looks like I actually gave you some helpful kind of error propagation stuff. Um, Here's how to link something. So this is using a command called href. Href takes the URL first in the curly brackets, and then the next curly brackets are the actual words that are going to come up. So you see the here right there. Mm, Here's the figure. So this is what almost all figures will look like. Begin figure, H, I think that's just hanging. It's like how it's laid in the text. Centering, include graphics. So this is where I usually just do scale for everything, but you can technically do like width equals, height equals, and give it the pixels or give it the actual dimensions. But this is the critical part. So if you want to include a picture, much like Python, when you're referring to like the text file or anything like that, you need to upload it. So I would be uploading a picture that is just a file, and then I can reference that picture. Of course, I lost my spot. So that's what figures look like. Um, Not sure if you'll encounter that, but that's actually kind of a tricky formatting one there. Where is it? Here. So if you want to do like subscripts and superscripts, like the fundamental frequency squared, you would do the subscript first, and then this kind of thing, which is like a blank space. So technically, this superscript is on a blank space. It's a weird kind of LaTeX glitch I've found. Here's some italic text you can see. What else we got? And here's another, if I click on this, it will bring me back to that section. Why? Because if I click on this, I labeled that as something. So now if I later in the document, if I reference it, it'll show up as exactly what that section was, section 1.22. What else we got here? That video I gave you in the diffraction grading video, so we don't need to look at that. See the following for the syntax of this function. What is that? Oh, we don't need that. Um, mm, anyway, this is just an example of error propagation. I wrote this at some point over the summer, but I don't remember why. Just to give you an example of doing this, I guess, more so than just the diffraction experiment. Um, just some more random stuff. Like I said, a lot of this is, yeah, truly random LaTeX stuff. Just a bunch of like, what if you needed to do a square root? What if you wanted to talk about units of something? What if you wanted to put a little arrow? Here's how you make those arrows. Put a sum. I just try to uh, put in as many functions and equations as I've ever used. This I actually put in one of our figures before. Ba, 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 ba. Figure, we kind of already covered this at this point. Oh, citation. Here we go. So I'm going to say cite Bronstein, and then down here, we'll get to that table in a second. Down here is my bibliography. Now, this is where my kind of personal preference lies. Most people use a software called Zotero, which I don't even think I have on my computer anymore. I don't even think I have Zotero. I do. So this is what most people use for their bibliography. Um, I think unless you are doing a thesis or a research project with a bunch of different people, all kind of doing their own research, like trying to get to some common ground, I don't think you need to use this. It is easy because you can export things straight to LaTeX. Um, I personally think it's too much work. So I do kind of my own citations. I just think it's easier. Um, this is just, yeah, begin the bibliography. This is adding a line to my table of contents for the references. Most people leave that off, but I never really understood why, if I want to look at the references. And here's where I'm going to start every single citation. So my bib item is called Bronstein. So when I wrote here, cite Bronstein, it has this little one symbol, and that's my citation for it. So that's basically how you're citing things. And in most citations, you're kind of just, you know, following the best practices of the time. This none of those examples are very good. Let me I don't know, find a better one here. I would say this is kind of a normal citation. Authors' names, title, hyperlink to the journal article, but at least in my field, it was best practice to also link the free version of it. So like that's the one that came out in 2017 after it came out in 2016 on the archive, because that's what most people do. They put it on the archive, it gets a bunch of citations, and eventually it gets published in a journal. Um, let's see here. What else do we want? That was most of it. Citations, tables. I left this one in here. Not really be using this. Totally okay with me, honestly. If you just want, if you want to make a table like this, you can just make it in Excel, make a screenshot, and then upload it as a figure. Um, totally cool with me. It's just one extra thing you need to learn here. Not, super useful. Anyway, so yeah, refer to this document all the time. I'm pretty dang good at LaTeX. It's been almost a decade I've been using it now. So yeah. Again, this is your kind of what you're going to be using every single time. And yeah. So this is something where you'll see history. You'll be able to see like what people changed and things like that. Um, you can go to different versions. Like say I wanted to like restore this version. Like let's say my lab partner messed up the whole document. And I'm like, why did you move that section over there? And we both agree we want to go back to this one. I can restore that version, things like that. Let's see what else. I personally like this one where I can see both of them at the same time, but you could technically just, get rid of that and then switch to the PDF every time you want to do it. I just like having them both side by side. I don't think I've ever clicked on that button before. This looks like the kind of repositories I was talking about where they like tell you what what template to use. Um, Sharing, you mostly won't be using because I've already done the sharing for you. Let's see, what does review do? Nothing. Oh, I guess that's like comments and such. Anyway, let's actually go to just editor and see if I can explain anything else for you. Quite frankly, I've never used any of these. Yeah, honestly, all of this is quite new. This is all kind of like ChatGPT era commands. None of this used to really be here. I don't even know what visual editor is. Yeah, it looks like a hybrid of both. Yeah, not not really sure what that's all about, to be honest. I just keep it in code editor and forget all about it. Toggle. Maybe, yeah, this seems like the ChatGPT kind of add-on that they've had in the last even though it says right there. Anywho, enjoy y'all. I think it is once you get going, it's so much easier to write anything math and physics adjacent in things like this, as opposed to Word. I just can't fathom how you would do everything in Word. So enjoy.